First of all, let me say this to Mr. Holman. I have never, and I'm hoping that, I've listened to all of this, and sometimes I think we put issues on top of issues, and there are quite a few issues floating around here. I think all of us appreciate our Border Patrol and those people that work for our federal government. And I want to thank you for being here today. And I can kind of understand why you could get a little bit upset. I got that. But I also say we got to be, we need to concentrate on, and I think it was Ms. Presley that said it, on the living and just not the dead and not just all the problems, but we got to figure out some solutions. And I think you presented some. And Ms. Merkavej, Mr. Holman, 5 times now, has presented 3 things that he thought ought to be done, and that could resolve this problem. But you said something that is really bothering me, and it's going to make me, it makes me think. You said it's not necessarily about the money. It's about a will. So I've got two pieces of that. I want you to talk about what Mr. Holman, a man who has been at his job over 30 years, Mr. Holman? Over 30 years, and who's a dedicated public servant, his recommendations, and then I want you to elaborate a little bit on that issue of it doesn't have to be this way. In other words, just because of money. You go ahead. Keep your voice up, please.
Thank you. So in terms of Mr. Holman's recommendations, they will not work. The children and families who I represent are refugees. They are fleeing terrible violence. They are coming to the United States to seek safety. The United States is not the only country in our region that has seen an increase in refugees and asylum seekers. All of the countries surrounding the Northern Triangle, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, have seen marked increases in the number of asylum seekers coming to their countries. What we need is not to end the Flores Settlement Agreement. What we need is not to change the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act. Those are 2 critical pillars that protect immigrant children in federal custody, that limit their time in CBP facilities to 72 hours, and require that children be released to family members after appropriate vetting as quickly as possible. Let me offer you 5 solutions. 1, let independent doctors into these facilities. 2, let public health experts inspect these facilities and give them authorization to order remediations. That is what the plaintiff's counsel in the Flores case sought just 2 weeks ago in federal court. The administration's response to those requests was no. The administration argued, and I quote, that would be a coercive remedy. The third recommendation that I have is to ensure that children are not in CBP custody for any longer than 72 hours. This administration has failed to provide plaintiffs' counsel in Flores with any data about how long children are being held in CBP custody. You have oversight powers on this question. 4th, children should not be separated from their parents. Immigration officers should not be separating children from their mothers, their fathers, their brothers, their grandmothers, absent a reason to believe that there is imminent risk of harm to the child. Now, finally, my 5th recommendation is that we Look at the data and do what works. When families have access to a lawyer, they appear at their immigration court hearings 99% of the time. When families are offered support from a social worker through the ICE Family Case Management Program, they show up for their immigration proceedings 99% of the time. Children and families belong together. They do not belong in detention. They should be released, and they should be free. And doing that would be far less expensive than what we're doing now. The ICE Case Family Management Program costs only $38 a day per family unit. To detain one person in a family detention center, it costs on average $320 per day. To detain a child at Homestead, like the legally blind child I found there in March, it costs the U.S. taxpayers between $750 and $775 a day. That child was detained there about 120 days unnecessarily when he had a father who was desperately trying to get his son back.
Let me ask you this then. So we are spending a minimum of $300 a day minimum on these children. Is that what you're telling me?
That is the rate that we are paying for one person a day at the family detention centers.
And if any of us were given $300 a day to take care of our child, that's quite a bit of money. And you could do all kinds of things. Am I right?
That's right.
All right, let me go on. Ms. Costello, I want to ask you about DHS's Inspector General's inspections of several immigration detention centers on the southern border. These reports were shocking to the conscience, and I think they will shock any American who takes the time to read them or even to look at the pictures. In May 2019, you issued a report on, quote, dangerous overcrowding and prolonged detention, quote, at a border facility in El Paso, Texas. I understand that your team saw 900 detainees in a facility intended for only about 125. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
The IG report found that some detained immigrants, quote, had been held in standing room only conditions for days or weeks, end of quote. The report goes on to say, quote, with limited access to showers and clean clothing, detainees were wearing soiled clothing for days or weeks. The report concludes that these conditions presented, quote, an immediate risk to the health and safety not just of the detainees, but also the DHS agents and officers. Ms. Costello, in all your years in government service, had you ever seen any conditions like these?
No, I have not, but more importantly, the inspection team that did the work on the ground for me has not, and they've been doing this for years. The reason we issued those management alerts is because they had never seen anything like what they saw in both the El Paso Center we reported on and the facilities in the Rio Grande Valley.
And so, but this is not an isolated incident. Just last week, your office issued another report describing, quote, dangerous overcrowding and prolonged detention, end of quote, at 5 different border facilities in Texas. Together, these facilities held over 2,500 young people. You reported that nearly 1/3 of these children had been held longer than the 72-hour limit. Ms. Costello, what were conditions like for the children in these facilities?
It was similar to the situation in El Paso for the children. The overcrowding was dangerous, significant. Again, my inspectors describe a situation like they had never seen before. That is the picture.
That's the picture?
Yep.
And can you tell us what is in that picture, please?
It is an overcrowded facility. You know, it is families and in a facility in a space that they can't possibly fit in. I think the caption underneath may describe, does it describe, no, I don't know that it describes the number.
No. So you mean people had to be like that pretty much 24/7?
Yes. Although, to clarify, they visited on the days that they visited, so, you know, that's their observation from that snapshot in time. But the understanding is that folks had been in that position for a while.
So when you went in, you all were Inspector General, the Inspector General's office was allowed to take the photo?
Yeah, yes, you know, that's part of how we do our work. It's how we collect our evidence. It frankly would never occur to me, sir, not to have our team go in and take pictures.
Thank you very much. How long were these children kept in these conditions?
In that facility, in the
Yeah.
Rio Grande Valley, the information that we have is that children were, 31% of them were there for more than 72 hours, 165 were there longer than a week. So that's children. With regard to unaccompanied alien children, we had 50 under the age of 7 who were there for over 2 weeks.
Now, where's that picture? Let me ask you this. I just know, I'm just curious. Where are the toilet facilities in this? Do you know?
No, I don't actually know.
Okay, fine.
But children are supposed to have access to toilets in the holding room.
Ms. Mukherjee, do you have a comment?
Yes, so in facilities like this, and this is knowledge based on interviewing hundreds of immigrant children and families, the toilets are open. There is no privacy to use the toilet. Children try to use those foil wrappers that you see to cover themselves when they're toileting, and this leads to problems. In Clint, we talked to girls who were so embarrassed that boys could see them while they were using the toilet. We talked to a boy who tried not to eat because he was so embarrassed to use the toilet. Every day, these children are being degraded by having no access to any privacy when they're using the toilet.
Yes, Ms. Costello.
I want to clarify, a member of my team was able to clarify for me. You can't tell from the picture,
Yeah.
but apparently the toilet is in back of that
In back of
wall
that,
yeah,
right
yeah,
there?
yeah.
That-
Yes,
all
yes,
right.
sir. You can't see that obviously clearly from the picture,
I
but
got
apparently
you.
that's where it's located.
Okay. One officer interviewed described the security situation as a, quote, ticking time bomb. Ms. Costello, CBP has detailed standards it is required to follow when detaining these children. Based on your inspections, do you believe that CBP is meeting those standards?
Not for every one of the standards, sir. I do want to emphasize that when we visited the facilities, they were well stocked, as I said in my prepared statement, with diapers, juice, snacks,
Did they know you were
water.
coming?
No,
Okay, go
all
ahead.
of our inspections are unannounced, and that's
Okay.
really the only way to do it. What they're not meeting standards are on, obviously, the crowding, the prolonged detention, some of the hygiene that the children are supposed to have, but it would be impossible to do so in the conditions that we saw there. It's shocking.
Does it shock you that we're spending a minimum of $300 per day?
I don't have information that validates that particular number.
That's not what I asked you.
I know, sir.
That's not what I asked you. I said, would it
if-
shock you to know that we were spending a minimum of $300 a day for folks to live in a facility like that?
If that were an accurate number, sir, yes.
Sir, can I answer that question for you? I can put
Sure,
some.
sure.
The $300 a day is for family residential centers, and the reason that price is $300 a day because we have to provide child psychologists, pediatricians, an educational program. The pictures you are being shown are Border Patrol facilities. There's not a cost per day there. The $300 a day is that's an ICE facility, a different facility.
Well, we're spending something though, right? Wherever the picture is. We're spending some money. Them people ain't coming for free.
I don't know what the border patrol facilities cost. I'm just, the $300 figure is an ICE facility.
I got you. I understand. Did you have a comment on that, Ms. Mercury?
I wanted to agree with Mr. Homan, that's correct.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. So, now, Ms. Costello, you've testified that DHS, quote, has not developed a long-term plan to address the issues within detention centers along the southern border, end of quote, and that the steps DHS has taken to alleviate overcrowding continue, these are your words, to fall short. Is that accurate?
You know, I think the efforts to put tents in place and try to create more space to eliminate the overcrowding are first steps. But as I did testify earlier, it's about moving children and families and adults out of these facilities to begin with. The CBP facilities were never intended to house folks for, as many folks on the panel have testified today, for longer than 72 hours. We are currently engaged in efforts to try to identify why they're staying there for longer than 72 hours and to offer some recommendations for things that we can do about that.
How soon do you expect those recommendations to be made?
We're just getting involved in that work.
That's not what I asked you.
I know.
Okay.
But you know, if I promise you a date and then I don't
You know I'm going to have you up in here.
I know you're going to ask me again, sir.
Yes, I certainly will.
It will take some time for us to get there. I think we have several lines of work that we're engaged in on all of these issues that have been discussed today. Some of them will be ready this fall. That one, probably not yet.
Now, I want you to understand that this is very unusual for us to be here this late on a getaway day.
I know, sir.
But it's urgent for us. It's a life and death situation. And that's why I'm kind of pressing you a little bit
Yes.
here. I just want, like somebody said on the other side, we're looking for solutions. And sometimes to get to solutions, you have to have accountability and you have to have pressure. So we want to see something get done as fast as we can. Yes, ma'am.
I want to add to the record that CBP has dealt with larger number of apprehensions in the past without causing and creating a health and safety crisis. So if apprehensions continue at the rate that they've been in 2019, without the drop that we saw last month, without the 28% drop from June, 2019 will see no more than 67% of the number of apprehensions that we saw in 1986, in 1998, in 1999, and in 2000. And the Flores Settlement Agreement was reached in 1997. It requires the government to plan for an influx. 2 weeks ago, a federal court recognized that the government has had 22 years to plan for an influx, and the court ordered the government to do so forthwith. So I agree with you, Chairman, about the urgency of the situation and that the administration needs to act now to care for these children and release them promptly.
Costello, you're going to get back to me, right? Let me know when you kind of believe you can get that done.
Of course we will, sir.
I really would appreciate that.